Psychologists of Reddit, what is normal to feel, but yet many of us think only we and a few feel? Competence. It seems like everyone suffers from imposter syndrome, but in reality a lot of people are good at their jobs and know it. So is a psychologist. Sadness. It's okay to feel sad, even for a couple days. Sometimes life sucks for whatever reason. There is no imperative to feel happy all the goddamn time. Some of the most prominent things I've come across people feeling are hurt by the actions or inactions of others. This can be applied to multiple situations. One example would be that a lot of people get tunnel vision and don't realize that, even if they were the ones wronged, often, not always, but often enough, all parties involved had their feelings hurt somehow. Lonely. It is so extremely normal to be surrounded by people and still feel lonely somehow, sometimes, or not have anyone around. Be happy with yourself and yet feel lonely, like they don't really know what they're doing. Just confused and unsure about decisions. Just people, please understand. You have the right to your emotions, whatever they may be, even if they don't necessarily make sense. What you don't, however, have the right to do is vomit them out on others in an unproductive way, which is where most people tend to go wrong. So, just try to be kind to yourself at the end of the day, and be kind to others too. I'm a counselor, not a psychologist, but here are some common things I see that tend to pop up. Shameful life events beyond our control. Anger around emotional disconnection. Fear of being hurt while being emotional vulnerable. Joy, eventually, when having practiced vulnerability with a safe person in a safe environment. Question. I have a tendency to do this thing in high stress situations where it feels like my emotions turn off. Example. My so struggles with depression and anxiety and she's come a very long way, but whenever she has a breakdown and I'm attempting to comfort her, I don't feel bad for her or anything. Like I'm aware of how I should feel, I guess, but I just cannot. This isn't the only situation this occurs, just the freshest in my mind. It frustrates me after the fact, but like all my emotions shut off. I used to feel sympathy during a breakdown and I love her to death, so I feel guilty about it. We have talked about it, but it seems like I can't make myself not shut down in the moment. Therapist here. It is normal to feel or think that you overthink everything. I believe that 9/10 of my clients tell me this at some point. Here's the thing, though. We are human. We have cognitive capabilities. Therefore, we think. Chances are you aren't overthinking, you're playing out scenarios and or ruminating like we all do. Scared of change. Change, even in a positive fashion, is hard. It's ambiguous and feels a bit out of our control. It's okay to be nervous about it. Like everyone else understands / gets / has something that you don't. Imposter syndrome or not, it is a human condition to compare ourselves to others. Oftentimes, we do this with a negative pair of eyeglasses, and it torments us into thinking we are outside of everyone else. Scared, just generally scared. A lot of times we associate fear with weakness. This is detrimental thinking. Fear is normal, and it is healthy. Fear signifies some form of real or perceived danger. If that didn't get activated, we'd all be eaten by bears. I promise that your family is just as weird as any other family. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me to diagnose what's wrong with their family after I mention what I studied in school, I could pay off my student loans by now. Everyone is strange in different ways. You just think your family is an extreme case because you are comparing them to the facades that other people show in public. Not a psychologist, but the Truman Show delusion. A lot of people, in one way or another, feel like their lives are staged, and those around them are acting to preserve their false reality. It is a form of delusion and narcissism. Sometimes, I do too. Any negative emotion for that matter. It's absolutely okay to be jealous. Sometimes, this leads to something called as meta worry. I worry that I'm jealous of someone. I worry that I worry too much. No emotion by itself can be classified as negative or positive, since almost all emotions have got an evolutionary reason to exist. It's the intensity and the behavioral manifestations of emotions that make them adaptive or maladaptive. This is very true with people with anxiety, but the idea that you are crazy or going crazy A lot of people think that, since they can't stop their thoughts and emotions, that they must have all these terrible mental diseases and people will think they are crazy if they don't already believe they are. I went through this, and almost everyone in my group counseling felt the same way in one degree or another. Always just remember that your thoughts and emotions during those moments are not you, and any decent person will understand and not judge you for them. Throw away for obvious reasons. I'm surprised there are almost 500 comments here and only one that uses the word sex. So I'll add, it's normal to have uncomfortable feelings about having experimented with siblings/cousins, things that we later learned were sexual but didn't really understand at the time. I can remember playing doctor with the neighbor kids, but also with my sisters and my cousin. This is a normal part of growing up. I think it's safe to say there are a lot of people who had those experiences and felt uncomfortable at the time. As a child, if you didn't want that experience and it was traumatic, that's definitely an issue and is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is having the experience as a child, being perfectly comfortable with it, probably having enjoyed it, and then only later as an adult feeling uncomfortable about it after society's taught us that sex is shameful. That experimentation is normal, and it's also normal to look back on it and maybe cringe. That doesn't mean it was a bad experience, or that it was wrong. You learned something, and when you grew up you learned more. As I said, this is not in the same category as unwanted and traumatic events. Not trying to group them together in any way. You are good enough. Corporations make a lot more money from people with lower self-esteem and or low self-worth. So many companies are selling products or services that implicitly promise that whatever commodity you are going to buy from them will make it all better. Next time you see an ad, watch it more critically and see what are they really trying to convey. You are good enough. Intrusive thoughts, e.g., I could totally kill this person right now, I don't love my s.o. anymore, etc. Not a psychologist, but I have OCD, and in all of my research it's been astounding to realize that nearly everybody has these thoughts. The difference is, people without OCD can usually move past them. An OCD-wired brain is more likely to stay fixated on these thoughts, which is why we sometimes think we are the only people to experience these types of distressing thoughts. If you have thoughts that don't seem like they're coming from your own brain, you aren't alone. It's how you react to them that counts. Flow. That feeling of going with the flow, being in the zone, etc. It's where our skill/talent is matched with the challenge at hand, where we have to be completely engaged in order to keep up with the challenge. This is easiest to think of in terms of sports, but can be experienced in nearly any activity: writing, rock climbing, playing video games, brushing teeth, and so on. Disclaimer: positive developmental psych-ma, not a practitioner. Slightly uplifting. In a given day, the majority of our experiences are neutral or slightly positive. There's a memory recall bonus for negative events which can make them seem more frequent, but on average, our days tend to be composed of mostly neutral and positive experiences. There is a study on this. Snyder and Schenkel, 1975. They asked people to list characteristics that make them unique. It turns out that 90% of people believe that a unique thing about them, their superior sense of humor, their self-criticism, their sexual problems, and their realization that you need to be careful about which people you trust. Also, according to Mann's other studies, almost all drivers think they are better drivers than most people. Not a psychologist, but one thing a lot of people have, if not everyone, just some won't admit it, is imposter syndrome. This is the idea that no matter where you are in life, in your career or whatnot, even if you're successful, you feel like you're a fraud who faked their way to where they are and everyone is going to call you out on it. That life is hard. So many of my patients believe they're the only ones struggling. What they fail to realize is that they are comparing their worst to everyone else's best. It's like you're comparing your all-time not top 10 plays to everyone else's top 10 plays. From that perspective, you will always feel like you're barely making it and everyone else is cruising through life, and that they're not good enough. I'm convinced we are all trying to answer the same question in life: am I good enough? The Forer effect, otherwise known as the Barnum effect, relies on exactly this. Barnum statements feel like insights into our particular feelings, but actually apply to most people. They are widely used in astrology, fortune telling, cold reading and speaking to the dead, because if the scam artist uses them, you will feel like they are reading you in some supernatural way, but actually they are making statements of general application. Examples. 1. You have a great need for other people to like and admire you. 2. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. 3. You have a great deal of unused capacity which you have not turned to your advantage. 4. While you have some personality weaknesses, you are generally able to compensate for them. 5. Disciplined and self-controlled outside, you tend to be worrisome and insecure inside. 6. At times you have serious doubts as to whether you have made the right decision or done the right thing. 7. You prefer a certain amount of change and variety and become dissatisfied when hemmed in by restrictions and limitations. 8. You pride yourself as an independent thinker and do not accept other statements without satisfactory proof. 9. You have found it unwise to be too frank in revealing yourself to others. 10. At times you are extroverted, affable, sociable, while at other times you are introverted, wary, reserved. 11. Some of your aspirations tend to be pretty unrealistic. 12. Security is one of your major goals in life. I have flashbacks to negative moments in my life. The worst day of my life was several years ago, and until recently, about 6 months ago, I had intense flashbacks to that moment. I would remember it in detail, and it felt like I was there in that moment again. Is that normal? I've had a ton of people apologize to me when they open up. Many people feel guilty or that they are being a burden when they share something that they are struggling with. We call it sharer's remorse, that instant regret feeling you get when you're vulnerable, even if the person you told didn't give you a reason to feel bad for sharing. It happens all the time, and it always makes me wonder who taught us that it's not okay to let ourselves depend on one another. Any kind of negative emotion, anger, sadness, jealousy, guilt, everyone feels them, even if they don't want to admit it. You're allowed to feel these things, even if people around you don't think you deserve to feel that way. Don't let someone else tell you how you should feel, and you don't have to justify your feelings to others. Too many times people say you have everything. How could you possibly be depressed/sad? Don't listen to that shit. Be sad. Allow yourself to feel those feelings. But as always, if these feelings get worse and worse, or are constant, then talk to a psychologist. We are on your side and here to help you. I don't think people realize how amazing it is to talk to someone that is 100% there for you and you only. We don't care what your mother/father/sibling/whoever thinks you should be. Only what you want. Psychologist, here. What we fail as humans to teach our children is that all of our feelings are okay and are part of our own normal. Anger, sadness, guilt, frustration, happiness, irritation, joy, they're all part of our normal and they're ours. One thing I think most people feel terrible about feeling is suicidal. As humans, we think in opposites. It's day, it's night, lights are on, lights are off. We are alive, we are dead. Beyond my profession, I strongly believe that every person has contemplated suicide at some point in his or her life, even if it was a fleeting thought about what it would be like to not be here anymore. It doesn't make you anything more than simply human. And, as a psychologist, I will strongly suggest that, if you feel you might act on those feelings, please reach out to someone, anyone. The National Suicide Hotline has online chat support now. You don't even have to make a phone call. And, you're normal.